Have you ever said something that somebody took in a way you didn't intend? Well, shouldn't your intentions matter? I don't know, maybe not as much as you might think. Let's talk about on this episode of Journey at Home. Appreciate you tuning in, by the way. Great to have you here. We want to make it simple for you to connect with Jesus and live a better life. So take a moment, hit that subscribe button, hit the bell for notifications so you don't miss anything we have coming your way. And now let's jump into episode 3 of The Weight of Your Words. So back when I was in my early 20s, I was living in Colorado, and I'd occasionally fly back home to see mom and dad and the rest of the family. And on one of those trips, I'm driving my parents' minivan to go speak at a church when I got in an accident. And I want to stress that word accident because it totaled their car. I didn't mean to do it. I'm not even sure it was my fault, honestly, but it happened. So I called them. I broke the news. They were very understanding. But unfortunately for them, explaining did not equal repairing. They still had a totaled car they had to fix because, well, they had a son with no money at the time. Now, I bet you're not writing any of this down because it's so obvious, right? Of course, explaining doesn't equal repairing, even though it's an accident. We all know that when it comes to physical objects. I'm not so sure we understand that when it comes to our words. During this series, we're discovering 3 dynamics that are at play every time you communicate with people who are close to you, whether it's family or friends, coworkers, employees, maybe somebody you're dating. And the premise of the series has simply been this, that when it comes to the people closest to you and the people you care about the most, your words carry the same weight as your actions. In other words, words leave a mark for good or bad. They can build up, they can tear down. They can give us confidence, they can crush us. Words can shape our lives and our futures, and sometimes the words that we needed to hear but never heard shape our lives and our futures too. For instance, some of you grew up never hearing things like, I love you, I'm so proud of you, I'll always have your back. And if you're honest, the void of those words has driven the direction of your life. It's impacted how you relate to the people closest to you now, hasn't it? But the tension of this series is that while we recognize the impact words have had on us, we're often blind to the power our words have on the lives of the people around us. And we're unaware of the responsibility we have to use our words wisely. So over the past couple episodes, we've been raising our awareness of these dynamics that are at play in every relationship we have with the people we care about. The first dynamic is that words are not equally weighted. Some words weigh more than others, and negative words always weigh more than positive words, which is why the ratio of positive and negative words is not fair, is it? It's not 1-to-1. The people closest to you need to hear far more positives than negatives. In our last episode, we talked about the second dynamic. Source determines weight. Who says it determines how much your words weigh. And then weight determines impact. So whenever we're communicating with someone where we're not an equal, a parent and a child, a teacher and a student, a boss and an employee, it's really important that we remember who we are and who we represent as we communicate so that we make sure our words build up instead of tearing down. Now, in this episode, we're going to explore the third dynamic. Intent is usually irrelevant. Intent is usually irrelevant. Now, this is not good news for any of us, and if we're honest, most of us act as if this isn't true. But just like my intent to not wreck my parents' car was irrelevant to what actually happened, your intent with the words you say is often irrelevant to the impact they actually make. And while we're talking about bad news, explaining my intent doesn't equal repairing. Explaining what I meant to communicate with my words does not put the relationship back to its original condition. Saying, oh, no, I didn't mean it that way. That didn't come out right. I was just trying to be funny. Well, that doesn't fix the situation. Explaining your intent is not the same as repairing the relationship. Matter of fact, it's just not helpful. It's usually irritating because when you've been hurt by someone's words, you don't want an explanation, do you? You want the damage to be fixed. And explanations can't fix damage. Explanations just make the person that was hurt feel like, oh, it's now my problem, right? It's now my responsibility to make things right. After all, they explained they didn't mean to. So why aren't they forgiving me now? Why can't we just move on? But things aren't that simple, are they? That's why apologies are important. But you have to recognize apologies don't reverse injuries. I'm glad you apologized for what you said or did. It's the first step. But it doesn't convince me that you didn't mean what you said or did. After all, you may not have intended for those words to come out, but they came out. And they only came out because they were in there to begin with. And how do I know they're not still in there? Maybe I just learned something about how you view and value me. So what do you do when an apology just isn't enough? Well, James, brother of Jesus, addressed this when he was writing a document to Christians in the first century. He starts with a statement that whether you're a Christian or not, we can all agree on this. He starts by writing, "We all stumble in many ways." To which we're all like, well, yeah, we do, James. You're correct. None of us are going to argue with that. But then James writes, "Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect." Now, why would he say that? Because the hardest thing to get a handle on is your mouth. Your mouth's the most powerful tool you have because your words carry so much weight. So if you can ever get to the point that you have mouth control, you've achieved graduate level self-control. It's a sign of real maturity when you can guard your mouth and select your words carefully. James actually paints a picture of how powerful our mouths are. He says, "Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark." Now, we've all seen and heard enough about wildfires to know how this works. Just one careless mistake, one campfire left unintended, one pile of embers not extinguished in the right conditions. They can wipe out thousands of acres of trees and homes and neighborhoods. It can cost people their lives. It can cost them their livelihoods. One careless campfire left unattended can change people's lives forever. Well, James says in the same way, the tongue also is a fire. If I can personalize this, your mouth is a spark that can start a fire at any moment. Your words have the power to burn down a relationship, burn down a marriage, burn down a career, burn down an opportunity, burn down someone's self-esteem and self-worth, burn down somebody's confidence, burn down somebody's dream. Because your words may start small, but they don't stay small. They're never contained to the moment. They can spread quickly. They can do significant damage for an extended period of time. So let's use our imagination for a minute. Let's imagine that you've said something in the past that's hurt somebody. I know that's a stretch, right? You've never done that. Just play along. And now you're thinking, oh yeah. Those words definitely start a fire, and I don't know how to put it out. So what do I do? Well, there are two approaches you can take to try to mitigate an unintended fire. You could try to contain it, or you could try to extinguish it. Now, let's start first with contain it, because this is what most of us try to do. It's why we reflexively start explaining. Here's what I meant. Here's my intent. But explaining is not containing. Explaining actually feels spreading, because explaining feels like blaming. When I start explaining how I didn't mean it the way it sounded and I couldn't talk to you about it because of, A, B, or C, it just sounds like I'm blaming you for you taking my words the way you took them. I'm blaming you for letting my words bother you. I'm blaming you for not moving past it quick enough. Explaining isn't containing. Containing never actually works because containing isn't possible. So that leads us to the second option. For those of us who are Jesus followers, we are called to extinguish the fire our words have created. And do you know what extinguishing takes? It takes humility and it takes sensitivity. Yeah, neither of those things come naturally to me either. But if you want to make things right, you got to start with humility. Humility requires you to put the person you hurt and their interest ahead of your own. Humility requires you to take full responsibility for what you said. And then with humility, I'm going to be sensitive to your pain. I'm going to be sensitive to the damage that I caused you. And I'm going to see how you want me to make things right. This is very different than explaining, isn't it? When I'm explaining, I'm making the conversation about me. When I'm extinguishing, I'm focusing completely on you. So what does it look like to express humility and sensitivity? Are you ready? It's not too complicated. You just go, "I'm so sorry." And then you stop talking. I'm not very good at this, but I'm trying to get better. You just say, "I'm so sorry." And then you don't say another word, because if you do, it'll sound like you're excusing or explaining. You just say, "I'm so sorry." And then you sit with your guilt while they sit with their hurt, and you wait for them to tell you how you can repair the relationship. You extinguish the fire your words created with that kind of humility and that kind of sensitivity. So let me ask you a question that you don't want to answer any more than I do. Who do you owe an "I'm so sorry"? I bet there's somebody in your life that needs to hear that from you. Maybe you started a fire recently with your words and you need to circle back and you need to say, "I'm so sorry." Maybe you hurt somebody a long time ago. but it's never been fully resolved. The relationship's never been completely right since then. Listen, I don't care how many years ago it was. If you're a Jesus follower, you still need to circle back and say, I'm so sorry. Because that's what love requires of you. Hey, Dad. Hey, Mom. Some of you have a strained or a fractured relationship with a teenager or with an adult child. Some of you have a situation where your adult kids won't speak to you anymore. And you don't think it's your fault. You think it's their fault. But I bet if you were honest, you'd admit you said some words that started a fire somewhere along the way. You're not totally innocent in this. And you could be stubborn and just wait for them to change their mind and come back to you, but how's that working for you so far? How about you be the more mature person and reach out this week and go, I'm so sorry. And then respond with humility and sensitivity. Listen, if you don't, I think one day you're going to regret it. 3 dynamics are always at play every time we communicate with someone we care about. Words are not equally weighted. Source determines weight. And intent is usually irrelevant. So come on, your words have weight. To some people, they weigh 1,000 pounds. To some people, they're living under the crushing pressure of your words. Has anybody been crushed by your words lately? Is there a fire you created that you've just tried to contain and explain and excuse? It's time to repair the relationship. Stop explaining and instead approach them with humility and sensitivity. Listen, following Jesus and walking in his way of love requires us not to speak any unwholesome word, but only what's helpful for building others up, that it may benefit those who listen. And in the course of learning to use our words to benefit others, actually benefits us, because our relationships will be what we hope they would be all along.